Former WCW President Eric Bischoff has laughed off a new job role listing in AEW and also criticized the leadership of AEW President and CEO Tony Khan. We'll let you know about that. NWA Powerrr has arrived on the CW, well, kind of, on its streaming app. We'll let you know about that. Plus, former NXT North American champions are set to return to the brand next week and compete in a four-way match. Lyra Valkyria retains the NXT Women's Championship last night. The NXT Heritage Cup Trophy match between Noam and Chad Gable ends in controversy. Two more names qualify for the Iron Survivor Challenge matches at NXT Deadline. Axium appeared on SmackDown last week, but is he on the main roster, and how soon was that decision made to have him appear on the show? John Cena undergoes his second arm surgery that he has undergone in recent weeks. Christian Cage is set to rechristen both Luchasaurus and Nick Wayne tonight on AEW Dynamite. We got the ratings for Monday's edition of Raw on USA Network. Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza are the new #1 contenders for the NXT Tag Team Championships, and former NWA Women's World Champion Camille is a free agent in January. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Let's start off talking about Eric Bischoff, who once again has slammed AEW President Tony Khan. Now, a growing trend in professional wrestling, professional entertainment, and workplaces in general is hiring an employee or department that is focused on maintaining a positive corporate culture and a healthy, open relationship between employees and management. And it looks like All Elite Wrestling is following suit. Currently looking for a vice president of people and culture who will be responsible for maintaining a positive culture and employee experience in All Elite Wrestling. Former WCW President Eric Bischoff thinks that's just silly. He said, quote, "Did he get that idea from watching TikTok?" Bischoff asked on Strictly Business, referencing the, I guess, youthfulness and progressiveness of the application. Quote, "I've never heard of that job classification. I've heard of human resources, but vice president of people and culture, you can't disagree with the need. There's clearly a cultural problem backstage. That kind of thing usually falls under human resources, but hey, whatever." Bischoff isn't sure that adding another cog to the AEW machine will make things more different and efficient. He said, quote, "I'm not crapping on it," Bischoff hedged. "I just find it woke as F, but whatever." The former WCW president isn't thrilled with Khan's leadership in general and thinks that no matter who is hired in the new role, the AEW CEO will need to strengthen up and fly right, saying, quote, "Leadership and vision are two things that AEW needs," Bischoff says. "You can bring in a vice president of culture and people, vice president of thought process, and a vice president of warm and fuzzy. You can bring in all kinds of people under the leader to try and fix the problem, but it starts at the top. Tony needs to be part of that process." Now, as it stands, Christopher Daniels is the head of talent relations for AEW, which would appear to be as close to the traditional human resources, but there is no word on whether Daniels will be working with or above or under this new vice president. What are your thoughts on what Bischoff has said there? What are your thoughts on this new role in AEW? And what are your thoughts on Tony Khan's leadership in general in All Elite Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts about that. Now, the NWA and the CW already have had a quite mixed and frosty relationship for a variety of reasons, but it looks like their deal with the CW is going ahead, kind of, because the first 8 episodes of season 15 of NWA Powerrr are now reportedly available to stream on the CW app. According to PW Insider, the weekly wrestling series is currently listed in the recently added section of the streaming service, even though a search of NWA or Powerrr doesn't yet yield other results relating to Billy Corgan's promotion. The earliest episode available to stream is the September 5 show, where NWA World Women's Television Champion Max the Impaler defended their title against Taylor Rising in the main event. The Immortals wrestled the Outrunners in a grudge match, and Brady Pierce wrestled Rolando Freeman in a singles match. The most recent available episode of Powerrr is the October 24 taping, where NWA World Heavyweight Champion EC3 teamed up with Jordan Clearwater to defeat Carl Hero and Lucius Lawrence in the main event. The latter show was the NWA's go-home episode ahead of its most recent pay-per-view. Now, it's unknown if the CW app will eventually add episodes from earlier seasons of Powerrr, or if the deal between the NWA and the CW is restricted to the ongoing season. Currently, fresh episodes of Powerrr continue to drop every Tuesday on YouTube at 6:05 Eastern. Last night, the Thanksgiving-themed special saw CJ wrestled Aaron Stevens in a unique turkey gobbler match. Previously, there were unconfirmed reports of Powerrr moving to the CW network television channel after NWA President Billy Corgan told Busted Open Radio that his promotion had landed a deal with a top 20 network. However, the TV deal was reportedly jeopardized after on-screen NWA manager James Mitchell was seen in a drug-snorting spot at the recent pay-per-view. It was later reported that NXT would be moving to the CW network in late 2024 and that Powerrr and other NWA programming would be restricted to the CW app and not on its free-to-air network television station. So if you've got any details on that, if you can watch the NWA on the CW app, let us know. Speaking of NXT, we're going to be seeing some former North American champions returning to the brand next week. As revealed during Tuesday night's episode of NXT, 3 more main roster stars are coming back to the developmental brand next week, that being Johnny Gargano, Bronson Reed, and Cameron Grimes. The 3 wrestlers, who are all former NXT North American champions, are set to face Wes Lee on the November 28 episode. If Lee can get the victory in the Fatal 4-Way match, he will have the chance to face reigning North American champion Dominic Mysterio for the title at the next NXT Premium Live event, that being Deadline, on December 9. The Judgment Day member is currently in his 2nd reign, having won the title back from Trick Williams on the October 3rd episode of NXT. Dirty Dom's last title defense was against Nathan Frazer on the 2nd night of NXT's Halloween Havoc episode. He is also set to compete in his first War Games match this Saturday at Survivor Series. Now, speaking of NXT, last night we had a Women's Championship match, and Lyra Valkyria is still your NXT Women's Champion. On Tuesday's episode of NXT, Lyra Valkyria successfully defended her NXT Women's Championship against Xia Li, winning the main event match with a Michinoku driver. The victory came after Li had attacked Valkyria earlier on in the show when the match was originally supposed to be contested, kicking the champion in the head during her entrance. The title defense was almost in jeopardy after the sneak attack, but Valkyria ended up being cleared to compete, and the match became the episode's main event, with Valkyria emerging victorious. The victory over Lee was Valkyria's first title defense since she became the NXT Women's Champion on night 1 of Halloween Havoc, defeating then-champion Becky Lynch. Lee, Lynch, and Valkyria have all been involved with each other in some form over the last few weeks, with the rivalry between Lee and Lynch specifically playing out on the main roster 24 hours before losing to Valkyria. Lee lost a match to Lynch on this week's episode of Monday Night Raw. Now, speaking of NXT as well, last night, it wasn't the only title action we saw, and there was controversy involved in this one. WWE main roster star Chad Gable was seemingly cheated out of a championship match on last night's NXT, with Noam Dar still holding the NXT Heritage Cup. He was seeking an opponent, however, he got more than he bargained for when Chad Gable revealed himself on last week's episode of NXT. With the pair facing off in a Heritage Cup championship match on last night's November 21 episode, which was taped last week, they would end up going an unprecedented on American soil 6 rounds, with the result still coming up as a draw in the end. As announced, on a draw, the cup would not change hands, and therefore still the NXT Heritage Cup champion was Noam Dar. However, there were several points of contention in the match, including a big interference in the first fall, with Oro Mensah having physically gotten involved, kicking Gable when the referee's back was turned for the first fall. Noam Dar's first win came with an asterisk. It was also initially questioned by commentary whether or not Dar had tapped out before the end of time allotment, with a replay shown after the match. It is entirely possible the feuding between the Metaphor and the Alpha Academy will continue, as throughout the match, Lash Legend and Maxine Dupree squabbled. Legend ended up shoving Dupree by the end of the segment, while Otis got caught in the middle and ended up literally catching Lash before she screamed and ran away. With the draw finish, we'll have to stay tuned to see if Gable gets another crack at the Heritage Cup or if Dar attempts to move on. We'll let you know if we get any more details on that one. Now, the Iron Survivor qualifying matches continued on NXT last night, and 2 more participants have qualified for NXT Deadline. In the lead up to Tuesday's episode of NXT, WWE Hall of Famer John Bradshaw Layfield revealed which competitors would be competing in the next pair of Iron Survivor Challenge qualifying matches. On the women's side, Blair Davenport battled Thea Hale, while Carmelo Hayes faced Josh Briggs to qualify for the 3rd spot in the men's match. Last year, Hayes put up an impressive performance in the inaugural Men's Iron Survivor Challenge, trailing by just 1 pinfall to the eventual winner, that being Grayson Waller. This year, Hayes was looking to win the competition, but first, he was tasked with defeating Briggs in the qualifier. Toward the end of the match, Hayes seemed to be setting up for nothing but net until Lexis King made a surprise appearance, hopping up onto the ring apron beside him. While Hayes thwarted King's attempts to interfere, the distraction allowed Briggs to capitalize by nailing Hayes with a clothesline. Briggs then ascended to the top rope, subsequently delivering a moonsault to secure the pinfall on Hayes. Upon his victory, Briggs will now join the likes of Trick Williams and Dijak in the 2023 Men's Iron Survivor Challenge. Later in the show, Blair Davenport solidified her position in the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge by defeating Chase U's Thea Hale. With this win, Davenport will compete alongside Tiffany Stratton, Last Legend, and 2 participants yet to be determined at NXT Deadline on December 9. NXT later confirmed that the 4th set of qualifying matches will be determined by WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler. Now, a bit of an update when it comes to Axium, obviously after he appeared on SmackDown last week, making his main roster debut. High-flying NXT superstar Axium has reportedly not been called up to WWE's main roster. According to PW Insider, Axium's match against Dragon Lee this past Friday on SmackDown was a, quote, literal last-minute decision, end quote, and not an indicator of the Spanish wrestler moving up from WWE's developmental brand. The report added that Axium was booked for the taping on the morning of SmackDown last week and was listed internally with the NXT brand as of Tuesday. Axium's match against Lee lasted nearly 10 minutes and was widely praised by fans online. In recent months, Lee has been used sparingly on NXT television, with his last match taking place on the September 26th episode of the show, where he wrestled Lee, Tyler Bates, and Trick Williams in a fatal 4-way match to determine the #1 contender for Dominic Mysterio's NXT North American Championship. The match was won by Williams. Prior to that match, Axium had a few singles matches against the likes of Lee, Tyler Bate, and Butch, but hasn't been in a meaningful rivalry since his brief feud with Dabba Kato earlier this year. Axium debuted to much fanfare in July 2022 after the former A-Kid was repackaged to his current superhero-themed character. Right off the gate, he went on an impressive winning streak and looked primed to become a significant player on the NXT brand. However, his momentum stalled after he lost his trilogy of matches with Nathan Frazer last year and has since struggled to find his footing. So as of right now, Axium's not on the main roster, but certainly anything could change. Now, John Cena has undergone his 2nd arm surgery as of late. Now, we spoke about the first one, but 16-time WWE Champion John Cena has discussed the latest surgery that he has undergone and thanked the doctor who operated on him. Cena disclosed on X that he underwent arm surgery just a few weeks after his previous operation on November 10. He said, quote, "Thank you for the autograph, Jeff Dugas. So very grateful to him and his whole team for 2 successful surgeries. A world-class facility that has me ready to seize the day with 2 repaired arms," wrote Cena. Now, the surgeries came after his recent WWE run, where his last match was at Crown Jewel on November 4, losing to the Bloodline Solo Sikoa. His run, which began on the September 1st episode of SmackDown, came about due to the SAG-AFTRA strike in Hollywood, which ended on November 8. During his most recent stint, he feuded with the Bloodline. Cena was the host of Payback, the premium live event, where he was also the referee for the match between LA Knight and The Miz, and later teamed with Knight at Fastlane, defeating Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso. He was also in the corner of NXT star Carmelo Hayes when Hayes faced Bron Breakker on the October 10 episode of NXT. The visit was Cena's first appearance on a televised episode of the developmental brand. In his last run with WWE, Cena also wrestled several dark matches on SmackDown against the likes of Montez Ford, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, and members of the Bloodline, excluding current undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Now, switching gears back to AEW, and we have a segment that's announced for Dynamite this evening. On tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite, Christian Cage will rechristen Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus a few days after the trio lost to Adam Copeland, Sting, and Darby Allin at the Full Gear pay-per-view. While no further details were provided, AEW announced via social media that the in-ring segment will be a part of the Thanksgiving Eve special episode of its flagship show. Cage was last seen being chased away into the crowd by his former best friend Copeland at Saturday's Full Gear event, where the two men came face-to-face on several occasions but never actually touched at any point during the match. Ultimately, it was Darby Allin who landed a coffin drop on Luchasaurus, allowing Copeland to secure the pinfall victory for his team. It is widely believed that Christian Cage and Copeland are being kept separate to set up an eventual singles bout, possibly at the upcoming World's End pay-per-view. Copeland has only wrestled 3 matches since signing with AEW back in October. Tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite will be emanating from the Wintrust Arena in Chicago, and it will also feature the start of the Continental Classic Tournament, the winner of which will unify Eddie Kingston's Ring of Honor World Championship and the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship to create the new Continental Classic Championship. As of this recording, Kingston, Bryan Danielson, Andrade El Idolo, and Mark Briscoe are the 4 confirmed participants for the 12-man tournament, which will culminate at AEW World's End on December 30. As reported previously, AEW CEO Tony Khan will announce the remainder of the tournament bracket on a streaming special episode on social media prior to tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite. Obviously, if we get any more details on that, we'll let you know. Now, let's go to Monday Night Raw. We've got the ratings for Monday's episode on USA Network, the Survivor Series War Games Go Home show. Now, WrestleNomics is reporting that while the overall rating for Raw was fairly consistent with last week's rating, a 12% spike in the 18 to 49 demographic gave the program its best rating in the coveted demographic since the September 4th show. Raw was watched by 1.459 million viewers, which is a 1% dip from last week, with 644,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demographic tuning in. Raw had stiff competition as this week's Monday Night Football game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch from the most recent Super Bowl, was the highest rated episode of the long-running sports franchise in 27 years. For both the overall demographic and the 18 to 49 demographic, the highest rated segment was the opening of the show, with viewership petering out as the show went on, finally bottoming out in the segment before, as well as the start of the main event, and then recovering slightly for the end of the main event match between Jey Uso and Drew McIntyre, as well as the reveal that Randy Orton would be the fifth man on Cody Rhodes' War Games team. The show also featured a match between Becky Lynch and Xia Li, and a segment between The Miz and Intercontinental Champion Gunther ahead of their match at Survivor Series as well. Now, let's talk about NXT again, because we've got two people that are actually linked with main roster call-ups who are now #1 contenders for titles on the developmental brand. Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza have returned with a vengeance to NXT to show off a new vicious streak. Now, after a victory over Idris Enofi and Malik Blade, the pair have their sights set on Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo, the NXT Tag Team Champions. Now, recently, Dave Meltzer has noted that there has been some internal discussion of possibly joining Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza with Santos Escobar now that the latter has turned on the LWO. With the fallout between members of the Latino World Order continuing after Escobar's vicious attack on Mysterio, Escobar is running solo against his former faction. He's going to be facing off against Carlito in a match at Survivor Series this weekend. However, after a victory last night on NXT, it looks like Garza and Carrillo have their sights set on NXT Gold first. And finally, we spoke about the NWA earlier, and that's what we're going to be ending on today, as a major star in the NWA is reportedly getting close to free agency. Former NWA Women's World Champion Camille will reportedly be a free agent in January 2024. As per PW Insider, the 31-year-old's contract with the NWA is set to expire by the end of the year, which could bring an end to her 5-year stint with the promotion. The report further stated that Camille has a good relationship with the promotion and she could continue to work with them despite not being under contract. Her husband and fellow NWA star Tom Latimer is reportedly set to stay with the NWA for the foreseeable future, according to the report. Camille is one of the most important women stars of NWA and held the NWA World Women's Championship for over 800 days, which she lost earlier this year to Kenzie Page. Apart from NWA, she's also wrestled for the likes of AAA, WOW, and ROW, to name a few, while she will also be involved in an independent film about the legendary wrestler Mildred Burke. Earlier this year, Camille revealed her desire to be a part of the WWE, calling the promotion the top of the top, asserting that she wants to show a wider audience what she's truly capable of. With her free agent status in January, there's a possibility she could debut at the Royal Rumble and possibly feature in the Women's Royal Rumble match as a surprise entrant if indeed WWE has interest. But there you go, guys. It's the latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.